Well, good afternoon. I, I have 12, so I think it's time to get going. Welcome. My name is Sandy Ratliff. I am with Virginia Community Capital, and we are happy to partner in this program, the New Knowledge Program, with the Washington County Chamber of Commerce, the Virginia Highlands Small Business Incubator, and the town of Abington. If this is your first time, welcome. Where have you been over the last 6 or 7 years? We started this program as a way to support the Washington County Business Challenge, to keep the professional development and helping our entrepreneurs build skills and to be successful in Washington County. And it's really expanded over, I guess, since 2015 when we started streaming this. So there's tons of content available out there for you. We have a YouTube channel that you can go and look at past workshops, and today's session will be recorded for education and training purposes, and that will also be up on YouTube later this afternoon. Just a few little quick housekeeping things before I turn it over to our speaker today. If you'll probably notice, we have everyone muted and the video off to help the event flow faster. And if you have questions while Kim is speaking, please post those in the Q&A section or the chat, and she will address those after the presentation. And, we're happy that people like Kim donate their time and their expertise to share at this program. This is the only way we've been able to do this since 2015, and it's for professionals like Kim and others in the region that donate their time to do that. Again, we're here to help you. If you have questions, please post those at the end. But I am delighted to have my new friend. We've known each other for a few years, but now we're working more together. Kim Davis with the Southwest Virginia Cultural Heritage Center, Friends of Southwest Virginia, and some other titles that she has. Kim has lots of experience in event planning, and she's going to tell you more about that. But Kim, I'm going to turn it over to you, and thank you again.
Thank you, Sandy, and welcome everyone. I'm really looking forward to sharing some of this information with you. And I am the Executive Director at Friends of Southwest Virginia. Here in Abington, we run the Southwest Virginia Cultural Center, formerly known as Heartwood. And we have a 53,000 square foot building that we run here. It's a visitor center. It's an official visitor center for the state of Virginia. And we do a lot of our programming out of here. So we do events. We do a lot of meetings, as well as a lot of public events and things like that. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, but I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with everyone, and we're just going to go ahead and get started. I've got a lot of good information to share with everybody. Let me hit this. We should be good to go. I want to tell you a little bit more about my event experience. I think this is really important, so you kind of know where I'm going to be coming from during this presentation. And also, we're going to cover what we're going to be going on during this presentation. So we're going to be hitting on the event basics. I really want this presentation to be really an opportunity to, I'm going to do this right here. There we go. To cover just event basics. So if you're just now getting into events, or you're looking at expanding your event knowledge, these are going to be some just good questions to ask and good things to go over. Also, if you've got event experience, but these are just a really good just reminder of things you need to do as you're starting to plan events. Also, I really want to get into some of the weeds on event day. Sometimes we spend so much time planning that we don't talk about some really good tips and tricks on making the actual day or the actual event run really smooth. And then finally, we're going to wrap up our talk about ticketing and registration systems. I want to talk about everything about how do you price an event? Like, how do you price a ticket? What should your ticket price be? What type of ticket or reservation system should you pick? How do you set that up, and how much do they cost? So I really want to hit on these things. So a little bit about me. I have a little bit over 20 years of professional experience in planning events. I literally went from an intern, in college, right after college, all the way to be producing events now in my career. So I've kind of seen the gamut. I've done all the running. I've done I've been the person that's, done all the grunt work, and then I've now have teams of people that help me do it. So I've kind of seen the gamut there. I helped lead a special events association when I lived in Knoxville. So it's just really fun to see a lot of event professionals come together, and I'd love to see something like that happen in our region. I've been a part of a lot of different events, large festivals, music festivals, citywide events, anywhere from 40,000 to being part of teams that have produced 350,000 people events. I've been part of teams that have been put on fairs, about 150,000 people over 10 days, produced a lot of concerts, fundraising breakfast for 900 people. And I show you this picture on this screen. This was the room set up for our fundraising breakfast that we had for an event that we did back about 10 years ago. So learning how to move people in and out of a room in an hour and eat breakfast at the same time was very interesting. Obviously, I've done pageants, awards, galas, fundraising events, seminars, retreats, and meetings. So I've really had my hand in a lot of different things, and it's been a lot of fun. Events are really my passion. Through this presentation, I'm going to tell you about key things that I've learned. These are not going to be groundbreaking lessons. These are going to be good reminders, but things that really have helped me in my career. The first thing I want to talk about is planning will set you up for success. The more you plan, the more you take time to plan, the more your event will run smoothly. And we're going to talk about how to pivot and things like that during an event, but really planning is key. So I'm going to show you pictures throughout this presentation. These are all pictures either I took or were part of. This is at Bristol Rhythm and Roots Reunion a few years ago in downtown Bristol. And I was actually on the stage when this was taken. So I want to start with 6 questions to ask when you're planning events. So let's start with the basics. Some of these are going to be very straightforward, and some you may think, okay, hadn't thought about that. But before you start trying to plan anything, you need to be able to answer these 6 questions. 1, this is very basic. What type of event would you like to host? Really knowing what you want to do. 2nd, when will the event take place? Do you have a date in mind or a date range in mind? Really knowing what your event's going to be and when you would like to have it is very important. Where will it take place? Are you going to have it in this country? You're going to have it in the region. You can have it in the city or the venue, meaning say, I want to have an event in Southwest Virginia, or I want to have an event in Abingdon or Bristol, or do you have a specific venue in mind? Really, the more you can drill down is going to be the better. Also, the 4th question to ask is how many people are you expecting to attend? And be realistic with this number, because this is really going to help drive a lot of things as you're planning. Next is, what is your budget for this event? Do you have budget funds available? Are you going to have to raise funds? Where's your budget lie? And then finally, probably the most important that people look over, but at the end of the event, what do you want to accomplish? How will you define success? Is it that people are going to come and say, that was an incredible event, one of the best I've been to? Or maybe people just say, I've really enjoyed myself, or I'm going to come and relax, whatever that is that you're planning. Or maybe if it's a business meeting you're planning, you want to be able to have actual things that people learn or people connect. Really knowing what you want to accomplish is really important. And as you have these 6 things, they really lay the foundation of what you can of what your event's going to be. There's also a couple other questions you can ask, like, who's the core team's going to make this happen? Are you on your own making this happen? Or do you have a team of people you can bring in the planning process and being able to do that? Also, knowing whether or not it's going to be a ticketed event and what's that anticipated ticket price is really important too as you're planning. So these are just things you can ask yourself as you are going, and planning. The last one there is, if it's open to the public, how will people find out about it? How are you going to market it? Things like that. So I want to talk about some pre-event planning questions to ask. So you've decided what you're going to do, when you're going to do it, you're thinking about where you want to do it. Now what? So some of these are going to just be great things, as reminders as you're going through to make sure you hit. I will tell you, I found this resource, the Guidebook Content Hub article. It's on the ultimate event planning checklist. I'm actually going to give this link to Sandy to put into the notes on the YouTube channel, so you can click on it. It had a great list. I kept going back to it as I was doing my own research, so I was trying to remember everything. That's just a great checklist, especially if you're planning business meetings, seminars, things like that. It was really good. So I want to make sure I do give credit to that. So let's talk about event basics. The very first thing I think you've got to know is about your team. Identify your team, what their roles are, allocate, specific tasks and actions, what they're going to do. Really know what you need your team to do. Define key milestones and deadlines, building out processes, including communication, reporting, and meetings. Really just being very clear on what you want your team to do. I really think that's a good first step because you'll kind of know what your capacity is and where you may need to ask for capacity. If you're by yourself and you're planning this, volunteers are a good role. Other partners, other business colleagues may be willing to help you. Don't feel like you're by yourself. Really, lean into and get creative on how you could help build some support for your events. Next, the thing I think is really important is building your event budget. Really start by creating a budget. You're going to add in your income and your costs. It's okay to have estimates at the beginning and you can update as you go, but really start getting your arms around what your budget is. This is really going to help you as you start thinking about the different areas that you need to plan and you need to think through. Also start with major catering. So if you're like, where do I even start on my budget? Major categories, I should say. So things like catering, decor, event, rentals are really important when you're looking at that events expense section. Also, throughout the process, make sure that you track where you are in sales. And what I mean by that is if you have tickets for your event, if you have sponsorships in the event, make sure you're tracking as you're getting closer where you're at. You don't want to be surprised the weekend of your event or the day of your event and think, oh, I haven't really run my budget or I don't have an updated budget. You really need to know where you're at so you'll know if you're going to come out ahead or how you're going to take care of any type of loss. And then again, things that you need to be processing there are ticket sales, sponsorship sales, merchandise sales. Those are things that you can track to see how your event's doing. I was actually talking to a group that's getting ready to plan a pretty big event, and you can kind of tell where your ticket sales are coming in and your merchandise sales of how many people you can plan for at your event. So that's going to affect everything from as you're planning on at the actual event, how many chairs to set up, how many porta potties to have, things like that. So it really helps you kind of get those final numbers. And then also, if I can say anything about the budget to give you any piece of advice, it would be don't rely solely on ticket sales to make your income. Really look at sponsors and other dollars to help offset it. Because if you don't hit those ticket sales numbers, you need to have a plan in place, a contingency of how you're going to make up those budget numbers. So really, I try to encourage, even if it's the smallest event, unless you've got the numbers just to carry it, don't solely rely on those ticket numbers. And final tip here, underestimate your income and overestimate your expenses. This is something that I actually preach to our team all the time. I want us to kind of think about, when we're talking about income, really looking at, where do we think we might fall, maybe underestimating that a little bit. And when it talks about expenses, maybe when we're looking at that, don't be shy, like put all the expenses on the paper, get it out there so you can see it and see where you're at. Okay, branding and theme. So why is this one of the major event basics? Because it is really the one component that affects your guests the most. It's the really good thing that people see. So you want to look at do you need an event-specific logo? Do you need to have a website? If so, do you need to buy your own URL or website address? Do you need to purchase that for a landing page or a website? Is it going to be, is this event going to be included on your current page? And what does that need to be looking like? Are you going to have social media presence? How are you going to do that? Really, how do you incorporate the brand and theme of the event into your public, like what the public is going to see? They'll see fact sheets and sponsorship sheets. And they'll also, at the larger events you really need to think about developing branding identity guidelines. So everything is consistent. I always tell a story that back, this has probably been 15 years ago, I went to work for an organization that had a big event, and we placed billboards throughout all of Knoxville, Tennessee. And all the billboards looked different the first year that I was there. That's what they had always done. All the billboards had looked very different. The next year, I decided, as we were coming up with a new campaign, to brand all the billboards the exact same way. All the billboards throughout the whole town looked the exact same. And what we started seeing from our patrons were, oh my gosh, I see you all everywhere. Every time I drive, down Interstate 40 or I'm throughout town, I see your billboards. We did not increase the number of billboards. We did not change the locations from the years past. But what we did is we became very consistent with our branding. And so that was really important that we did. Another event that we did when I was in Knoxville, we had American Idol come, and they called like a couple weeks before and said, we're going to come. This has probably been about 10 or so years ago. And, when American Idol was just huge and they were coming across the whole country and doing different tryouts. And so we marketed, we took an iconic symbol in Knoxville, the Sun Sphere, and we branded that to promote these auditions. And you can see there the American Idol bus, and right there off the main street in Knoxville was the audition area. And then you see the people lining up. These pictures, as you can tell, the sun's up, but the lights are on. They were taken around 6:15, 6:30 in the morning during the summer. And so people came, in the middle of the night to line up. And so you can see there, that's a small event. That's a quick event. It was a day in, day out event. We had about 2-week lead time on that, but just making sure that our branding really matched and really caught people's attention was really important. When we're talking about event basics and you're looking at a venue, I want to talk about this is if you're looking to a venue to have an event, or if you're a venue looking to get guests, these are things that I would recommend that you look at. First of all, if you're an event planner and you're looking at having venues, research the potential venues and come up with a short list. If you want to have a luncheon for 75 to 100 people, I can guarantee you'll have a couple handfuls of different location and venues. You want to have a luncheon, a sit-down luncheon that's served with 250 people, 300 people, that list is going to be a lot shorter. So taking your time, the internet will be your friend, that you can really make that decision. Also, check with the venue, see what their availability is, see what their base pricing is. Look at associated costs like food and beverage, audio, visual, AV, and parking. Are these included, or do you have to negotiate these things? Those are areas that you can a lot of times negotiate with your venues. You can also, as you get ready, make sure that you're really clear about your contract. Take time to read the contract. Once all the terms have been negotiated and you're good to go, look at your contract and be very clear. If you've got to get your legal team or your senior management to sign off, make sure they do, and then you can sign that contract. Next, at the venue, you really want to look at how's that event space going to be used, creating layouts and room allocations, like really understand the flow of the event, really take time to really have a good understanding and a good vision for that. Ask where, people are going to be unloading, load out, load in, parking information that you can share with your staff, exhibitors, and vendors, really being very specific of where that is. Also, especially if you're going to a convention center type area, they may have machinery that you can use, especially if you're setting up exhibit space or things like that, so that's always nice to know what machinery is on hand that can help you move product from load in. Also, one of the things that a lot of people forget is that when you do rent a space, if you know that you're going to have guests with accessibility issues, work with that venue. Be very clear with that venue about what those accessibility or special needs are of those. So that way you can make sure that guest has the best, possible experience they have in that venue. That's going to be important to that venue as well as your event. And also, really confirm key contacts and throughout the planning process. Know who your day of contact is, but who's making the decisions. Know those people and get to know them very well. And then also test the Wi-Fi and bandwidth of the facility. Not only can you ask it, but you can test it. Sometimes this is harder because usually when you're visiting a venue, another event is not going on, but really just know what that Wi-Fi is. Some larger venues will have options where you can pay to increase the internet speed at a certain time. So that may be an option at some larger venues. Also, event aesthetic, things that you need to think through here is there a theme of the event and how can we make it flow? How do we create impact, like a wow factor, photo opportunities? This is one of those things that a lot of people don't think about. They think, okay, I'm going to have this event, it's going to have a lunch, it's going to have a speaker, so I need to have a stage, but really taking a few extra minutes to think, okay, could we get some, florals in? Can we get some decor? If people really want to take pictures, where's a good photo op? Things like that. That you can really think about. If you're going to do a seated area, really think about putting decor on the table. And then look at ways that you can actually increase your own brand throughout the event. Like look for where you can place signage and things like that. And then, as you're looking, just think about like your printed materials and everything there that you can see here on the screen that you'll need to have. Next, when you're looking at venues, another big thing you need to look at is AV and production. A lot of times, as event planners, we may not know all the, the capabilities, the audio visual that we need. And so I have always found that if I can make a good connection with an AV supplier, that they will answer a lot of my questions and really give advice. Really, as you're looking, you can make sure your stage is large enough. So if you're going to have a speaker, you may have like an obsession or so. If you're having a business meeting where there may be a couch on stage where people are talking, or you may have entertainment, really make sure that that stage is large enough. Also, triple check that you have enough microphones and that the flow is going to be nice and smooth, as well as finding out when the AV teams can have access to set up, especially if that AV team is not part of that venue. Like, when can they come in? When does everything have to be ready? Do you have to do sound checks? If you're doing music entertainment, when can you do sound checks? You really need to know those things as you're planning. And then what are your contingency plan if you're having any technical issues? Another thing when you're looking at your venue is food and beverage. Be very clear about what your food and beverage needs are. Do you need a caterer? Can the venue offer catering options? Does the venue offer catering? Those are key things to know. Really agree on the catering timings and services. Those are important, as well as, knowing when, once you know what you need, knowing when the caterer needs their final numbers and dietary information. Usually, I would say that most caterers need event information 5 to 7 days out. However, as we are dealing with a lot of supply chain issues right now, I'm seeing caterers ask for, numbers anywhere from 10 to 14 days out. They have to order that food. They have to make sure they can get it in so they can guarantee it. So sometimes you need a little bit more lead time when you're confirming with those caterers. And finally, know who's going to be your day of contact. Finalize those arrangements with your staff and your catering. Also, if you may have event catering, and you may also have VIP catering if you've got any type of special guests that are getting additional, food and beverage options and things like that. And then if you have a band, you have a green room? That's an area that the band can go before or after they perform, and what needs to be in there. Other vendors kind of questions to ask is, what other vendors might you need? Decor, rentals, entertainment, things like that. Have meetings, site visits to really make sure that that vendor understands what you're looking for. It's not unusual for us here at the Cultural Center to bring in a florist before a major event and walk through to figure out where all we need flower arrangements, or wherever we need decor, or to bring in someone from a rental company to go over things like that. That's very normal. So you can always ask for those things. Also, when you're entering into agreements and contracts, read those over really specifically. Make sure it's very clear. Make sure you're clear in your communication of when you need things to arrive, when you expect them, who's your day of contact, all of those things. Another piece of advice is the day before the event, touch base and make sure that everybody's on the same page with when things need to arrive when. Next, once you've got all of those things, you need to, what's going to be your program? What are you going to actually do? And I broke this up into 2 parts. One is business meetings. So what are we going to do during we're planning a business meeting? What's your structure? What's your agenda going to be? Is it going to be a single session, or is it going to be a full day with a single track, multiple tracks, things like that? What's going to be going on? Think about ways that you can maximize learning, and what are your goals? Also, ensure there's enough breaks. Usually I find that every hour and a half or so, people need a break. They need a time just to kind of just have a moment to walk around, maybe check their phones, check in with work, network, things like that. Also, consider, how the message is going to be delivered, what the engagement, how you want people to engage, and then look at your room layout. Also, really make sure that the event technology that's going to be provided are going to meet your meeting objectives. So again, asking, being very clear with your AV supplier of, this is what I want to accomplish. How do we need to make that happen? And, if they come back and say, oh, it's going to be this much to make that happen, well, you can say, well, this is my budget. How can we get closer to what we want to make happen with this budget? And they will work with you and find different compromises. Also, and then recognizing, how are you going to measure effectiveness and outcomes of that business meeting? Again, these are things as you're putting together your business program. Let's say you want to do a larger event or festival. The number one thing I say is, what's your schedule? What do you want going on? When's your setup going to happen? Are you going to do a rolling setup? A rolling setup is when you take multiple days or multiple hours to set up. So, if you may have a full week to set up for a week-long event. So you may start you may start on a Monday and your event happened on a Friday. So what's going to happen each day to get you fully set? I was part of a 10-day event back early in my career, and we would set up 10 days. We'd start 10 days prior. We would have vendors and different folks coming in and set up. We'd have the 10-day events, and then we would have a 10-day, cleanup type shutdown that everybody would move out. It was a pretty large event, and a little bit different. A weekend event or a day event, you may be able to set up the day before, so it may not be as intensive. But what's your setup? When will your entertainment begin? When will public arrive? A lot of times you want your public to come in about 30 minutes to an hour prior to your entertainment. So there's actually people at the stage or at the areas that your entertainment's going on when the event starts. So maybe keep that in mind. Also look at what type of programming you want to offer throughout the event, as well as what's the breakdown and things like that going to be. Another big key thing I want to say is when you're looking at doing a bigger event or a festival, and it's going to be outside, especially, you need to figure out who's going to be involved. Are you going to need road closures? Can the city, town, or county help you with services like, security, like police or cleanup or anything like this? Really use your resources that are in your own towns at your fingertips to make those happen, because there's a lot of good resources there that towns and localities will be able to help you with. And then what type of equipment will you need? Again, this is more of an AV type question, but, what do you need? Or it may be, do you need fencing? Do you need things like that to really, maybe you're trying to fence in an area? What all equipment are you going to need to pull off the event? And again, consider the effectiveness and outcomes of what will be measured. How are you going to measure success? Next, once you figure out what your programming is going to be, now you got to figure out who's coming. So with the business side of things, really be clear once you pick your speakers that you provide them as much clear guidelines and specifics for their session. Set deadlines for content. Say, I need your bio and your headshot at this time because I want to put it on my website and promote it, or just be very clear with when you need things from the beginning, especially as you're signing contracts. Gather their headshots and bios, share details with the AV or event tech. They may have in their contracts if they have certain type of AV, specifications. You can share that if it's if you're able to provide that. And then you may be asked to book their travel and accommodation, so do that as soon as possible. And then outline arrival and departure times. I think that's really important to say this is when we expect you to be at the venue and this is when we think you'll be able to leave. And then confirm any rehearsals, walkthroughs, things like that. And then confirm contact numbers. Make sure that, especially if you're working with a larger speaker or a larger special guest, they'll have a manager. Make sure that whoever's going to be on the road with that person, if they're not going to give you their direct number, whoever's going to be with them is the number that you need. So that way you can, if something changes or they get lost or something like that, they know your number and they know you. If you're going to do a bigger event, like a festival or event, things to look at is, again, providing as much detail as you can to bands. Also gathering their headshots and things like that, and telling them when. Also make sure you share any stage plot information with the audiovisual folks. Make sure that they know, your lighting and sound guys know what's expected. That probably needs to be, shared as soon as you get it. So weeks and months in advance. Book their travel and accommodations and make sure you communicate those confirmation numbers. Review the rider. That's in the contract of what needs to be done for the band or the special guest. I will tell you that if you're looking at a lot of bands, if you're actually doing like a music festival or something like that, maybe consider doing an event writer, and that will supersede the actual event request, or that the individual band. So the festival or the event writer would, be in place instead of the individuals. So that way you don't have your hospitality teams trying to run everywhere to find green M&Ms for a band. It wouldn't be allowed. And that is done at the negotiation at the offer stage. So make sure that you have that early. And then of course you want to outline the departure times and arrival times, as well as sound checks and contact numbers. So marketing and social media, those of you that know me know that my background is all in marketing. So you will be surprised that I put all of this on one slide and it's not most of the presentation, but these are just some key things that just to remember when you're thinking about putting together marketing, really take time to think about how you're going to promote it and put that plan on paper. Set your goals, how many registration, how many ticket numbers, how many new followers do you want to get? All of those things you need to be tracking as a marketing person, or if you're handling the marketing. Do you need to create a website or a registration page? Go on ahead and doing that. Research and create an event hashtag. That's really important on Instagram and Twitter, especially because people can just index your event by hitting the hashtag. Also, will you be working with influencers? There's a whole list of things there, but deciding that up front, what you're going to do, what your budget is for that, what the offering is going to be for them. Creating collateral, and really making it very easy for your partners to be able to share your content. So, usually if you have a big event, you would share it with your partners, say, hey, here's our graphics this year. Please feel free to share throughout the summer, fall, or whenever your event is, to help us promote. Also, I would recommend, unless you have somebody on your staff, to hire a videographer and a photographer and be very specific of what you want them to do. So, you need to know what your photography and your videography policy is at your event, especially if it's a private event, making sure that a lot of times on your ticket sales process, you can put in there, you can have a line where they check that pretty much says that if by attending the event, they agree that you're going to be able to photograph and video them at that event. So there are things you can do there to really be clear about what that is, but also have that information on your website so people know. And then just really clearly communicate that to attendees. And then also any type of press releases that you can do, that you can send to the media, as well as media interviews you can have for your event are also good. So these are just some basic things. Behind the scenes is another event that I was part of. It was a large fireworks festival, had about 350,000 people attend this festival. You can see here down in the lower left screen there, that picture was probably taken about 5 or 6 o'clock in the afternoon on Labor Day, the Sunday before Labor Day. And you can see like how busy and how full the streets already are. This event didn't happen till like 10 o'clock. So you can imagine that by the time we got to 10 o'clock, that whole street area was, almost, you could not move. Well, actually you couldn't, because I tried to get through there a few times and it was very challenging. And so you really wanted to look at, as event producers, not only were we putting on a great fireworks festival and having all these things people could do, but really what is the safety? How are we keeping people as safe as possible? And that takes us into our next event basics. We just have a few more of these. Really notify your authorities and agencies where the event's going to take place, especially if it's a large event, then multiple agencies are going to be involved. And make sure you have the adequate insurance that covers any event that you're having. I am not an insurance expert, so I don't want to give you any expert advice. I tell you to call your insurance agency, talk to them, tell them about the event you have, and make sure that you are covered in what you're wanting to do. What arrangements do you need to be making if you're having an inside event? Do you want to do bag checks and so forth? Are you going to do scans at the gate, things like that? If you have an emergency preparedness plan, things like fire, illness, missing children, active shooter, a lot of those, what is your internal plan? The police are going to get involved with every single one of those almost, or the EMTs for illness. But what's your internal plan? How are you going to do that? Share copies with that plan with your key individuals. And then one piece of advice I would give every event planner that's listening to this, or anybody that has your own venue, if you do have an event and everybody scatters out of the building different ways, go ahead and name a place that is your emergency headquarters. I don't care if this is a business meeting or a private event or a large festival. Knowing where your team should meet is very clear. Be very clear with that. That will save you a lot of heartache if something happens. That everybody knows that we're meeting at this corner or meeting at this building or whatever it is, that that's how you're going to account for how people are doing. 99.9%, you'll never use that, but at least everybody will know where they're expected to go. Also, event staffing, making sure that the staff are really clearly briefed about the event. Over communicate with your team what you're expecting. Over communicate with your vision, over communicate the details with the team until they just know it. Don't assume people know anything, or even if you tell them once, just over communicate it. If you're unsure of something about what's protocol, ask. Tell them what your expectations are and be clear about dress code. That's very, here's what I'm expecting you to wear. Always say being very clear is being very kind. And that way everybody knows the expectations and there's no guessing. Also be very specific in what their responsibilities are, when you expect them to come in, approximate time to leave. I think that's also being very kind so they can make arrangements with their families. Sponsorships. I don't want to leave this out, but identifying sponsorships are so important, and they're not, finding different sponsors, different businesses to partner with to help can be really important. So share the details of your event, understand why it's important. Also, are there additional revenues that you're looking for? Are there, can you do VIP upgrade, fringe events, like other events you can do in conjunction or before and after? Do you do merchandise? Are you selling, content after the event? What are some unique ways that sponsors can get involved? And then outlines precisely what they're going to get. Tell them exactly what you're going to expect, that they can expect to get out of your event. And then once it's done, doing your event sponsorship wrap-up report, you can make sure that they've hit all of that. Also, parking. Make sure that you have adequate parking. Are people going to park on-site or off-site? They're going to create on-site. Are you going to have so many people arrive at one time that you need help, getting people in and out of your parking lot or the parking area? If so, you can hire off-duty police to help you do those type of things. If you're going to do off-site, are you going to offer shuttle service to do that? What about accessibility? How are you going to get those that have accessible needs into your event as easy as possible? And then if you're going to be offsite, what type of signage are you going to offer that makes it really easy for guests to navigate themselves from their cars to the event and then back? Alcohol, I can't express this enough. Know the law, know your local laws. Really, make absolutely certain that if, once you know the laws, that you have a licensed bartender to serve. Know your insurance policy. Sometimes you'll have to have additional insurance policies and things like that. If you have minors attending the event, you've got to be strict at all times with IDs, but especially maybe IDing at the door. The bartender's always going to ID, but sometimes you may want to do a wristband or something like that, just to give you that extra layer of protection. Also set a specific end time for your event, so like when you're going to stop alcohol, as well as, if you want to issue drink tickets, especially for a work event, you may want to give 2 drink tickets or something like that they can take. And then also if you need to facilitate any type of safe transportation. So if you're doing a music event or something like that, and you have somebody who has drank a little bit, how are we planning on getting them home? Just thinking about that, now that Ubers and things like that are a little more readily available, that's good. But just think through those type of things. But if I can't tell you enough, know your local laws, like be in good standing, like have a good relationship, and go forward there. And finally, as we go through the pre-event checklist, here are just some things that I do before every single event. I provide a final staff briefing and instructions. I prepare my badges, credentials, anything I might need. I make sure all signage is printed. I make sure that all the transport, the load in and all of that we've either got everything or we know when it's coming. We ensure that we have cell phone numbers for all of our main contacts. And we really, I usually will call or email everybody that's involved with the event at least the day before, if not 2 days before, to make sure that everybody's clear. Finally, you send out a reminder through the ticketing event system that you might use, or however you might get that out. You send out reminders and you need final things to attendees, as well as finalize that event timeline and print and make it really available to everybody. Create logistics checklists and who's responsible for what. So who's responsible for making sure the caterer gets set up right? Who's responsible for, making sure that the check-in, the registration table, things like that. Are there any gifts anybody needs? What information do you have everything you need from the speakers? Do you have proof of insurance from the suppliers? All those things that, you make sure you have. And then also one thing that I always like to have is kind of like, you call it event manager box or just a emergency box. And this is just things that you can have that are just secretly hidden, that might have tape, screwdrivers, Post-it notes, pens, things like that. When I've worked for festivals before, we've actually put these boxes at each of the ticket booths. And so they might have, all of these type things, plus like cord or twine or things like that, things that we might need to kind of help quickly fix something so you don't have to go run and try to find those things. And finally, share and print all documents with your team. I want to show you this event right here. And we're going to talk about the next lesson I've learned, which is plan and then pivot. So you'll see this picture right here. We held the Appalachian Regional Commission conference here at the Cultural Center last fall. And if you look at the sky closely, you'll see that, you've got these clouds. It had rained all day, and we had a lot of our event was outside. Half the event was inside, half was out. And so as I was watching, I downloaded a weather app that I actually paid for called Dark Sky. It's one of my favorite. It's most accurate. And it said that, pretty much 15 minutes before the event started, the rain was going to clear out for the rest of the evening. And so we had everything you see here. We had everything right inside the door, set up inside. And then 15 minutes before the event, everything looked clear. We moved everything outside, laid it all out, and the guests had no idea. So really knowing how to pivot, if it had rained, we would just then check in inside. It'd been a little bit more, congested in that area. But being able just to pivot and do those things are really important. Also, I really think the more you plan, the less you have to react to. So when you do have to react, you have a lot more energy and things like that to be able to do it. So let's talk about day of events, some key things here. And we're going to talk about, these are just probably like 4 or 5 top things I want to talk about that people sometimes forget to do. So on the day of your event, make sure that you walk through and make sure that all your branded elements in your signage are correct. They're in the right place. They're not crooked. There's no wrinkles, that it looks really nice. Also take time to look at your sponsorship signage. I can't do this, this is huge. Make sure that everything that your sponsors have asked for is fulfilled and it's where it's supposed to be. A tip is to assign someone on your team or your photographer to actually go around and take pictures of the sponsorship signage. I will usually give them a list of here is where the things I need you to do, or if the sponsor's doing an activation, that they get pictures. And then after the event, that photographer will just send me a Dropbox link or something with all the pictures, and I can make sure that goes along with the sponsorship fulfillment report. So just, make sure they check it all off, but that's a good way to make sure that your sponsors are happy and then they'll come back. And then of course, after the event, really make sure you put all your branded items away. If I can give you any advice on branded items, really print those evergreen so they don't have dates on them. They don't have, specifics on them. They're really kind of can be used year after year. So you can save some money there. Venue and footprint walkthrough, really take time before the event starts. Walk outside, walk in like you're the customer or you're the attendee, and make sure everything's in place. Just look at it through that, check your login, check your mobile numbers, or if you've got the event little radios that you use, make sure those work. Make sure that key timings are on schedule and things like that. Also, just do a quick trip to the bathroom. Make sure that it's clean, make sure there's no issues, because that will make an impression on your guests. Also, another event things that I've learned about events is see the event through your customer's eyes or your guest eyes. This was an event over here to the right. I did a private dinner for a group of media officials that was literally down by a river, and we used chairs from an old historic home, and all the plates were everything was very different. Everything was from this home that we were on their property. And but how do you see an event through their eyes? When you do that walk through like you're that guest. Think about, okay, I'm going to register, and then what am I going to do? Am I going to go grab a drink at the bar? Am I going to go network? Am I going to go sit down at a table? Really look at what that flow is. This is the thing that has always probably helped me with more events than I can tell you, because you'll see little things that you can tweak really quick that then your guests don't ever notice, and it makes everything flow really smoothly. And if you find a place where there's an impasse, you can make that decision on how to fix it, and your guests won't know. Event day for food and beverage, do make sure you talk to your caterers and things like that when things are going to be happening. Make sure you're very clear on the special dietary requirements and where those folks are going to be eating or drinking from. Make sure you fulfill your riders from the performers, and then also make sure there's water available for presenters on the stage. And then if you have any surplus of foods, you can donate that. I always used to pre-pandemic, we try to donate that food to those in need. Now you may want to check with those different agencies and see what they will and will not receive. Behind the scenes, again, I love to show these things. We had a chance when I was at the Birthplace of Country Music Organization to host documentary filmmaker Ken Burns. It was a private event. I think we only could have 100 people. And so we just got the whole staff just joined in. We all had our own responsibilities that day. I did lead that event. We had a big, huge bus that came in. We did private tours. And really, it was just a really fun event. And it's just nice to, when you're working with your team, to really, everybody has their own portion of what they're involved in. And even though I led that, I really just let the team do what they do best. So event day, just a couple more here on vendors. Make sure you check in with them, make sure things are ready, as well as event technology, do final tests and sound checks and have facilitators run through. Also, you want to introduce the performers or the speakers to the AV team. It's really important that they're really comfortable with the team that's running it, as well as at the end of the day, get copies of final presentations, data, and things like that. And finally, on the day of staffing, I know I've talked about staffing several times, but it's so important. Make sure you've got contingency plans if somebody can't be there. And if this is probably my number one thing I want to get through is when you're hosting an event, make sure you have a host. A lot of times we as event planners, we're behind the scenes. We cannot also be the host. You want to have somebody that's making sure that people are feeling welcome. People are feeling like they're connected, that you're looking out to make sure you're just engaging. That's what that host is doing. They're engaging with the guests. They're making sure everybody's having a good time, while the rest of the team of your event lead or whoever is actually making sure that the actual event behind the scenes is running as smooth as possible. It's really hard if you are the event planner to also be the event host, because it's inevitable that somebody's going to ask you, to do something that's going to take you away from overseeing the event or attending to a guest. So really take time to look at that. Also, make sure your sponsors, make sure you just touch base with them. This is something your host can do, and just greet them properly. Make sure they feel special and everything's taken care of, and if they're going to leave any items there to pick up the next day, make sure everything's just labeled correctly and ready to go. And then also just make sure you touch base with them throughout the time. As we get into the last part of this presentation, I want to talk a little bit about next level. I want to get into pricing. How do you price tickets? How do you pick up a ticketing system? How much in the world does it cost? All those things. So pricing your event, number one thing you wanted to look at is what's your break-even point? Where do you need to be to break even with expenses and revenue? Also, be realistic with your ticket sales. If I can tell you again, underestimate your ticket sales if you need to when it comes to budget, because you really want to be, you got to look at what you want them to be. Next, research similar events. If you're having a music event, if you're having a webinar, if you're having just a special concert event, what are other people in the region charging? What are people looking at? And also research competitor events. This is not just meaning like if you're going to do like a special concert for a fundraising event, let's say, don't look at other concerts, but also look at other events and activities people are doing that they're using their discretionary dollars on. That's really important. And so when you look at these type of things, you can kind of get a feel if you're going to be right in the middle there, if you're going to be high, if you're going to be low, because it's really, especially as you're getting started, setting your ticket price, don't go too low because it'll be really hard to get high, to increase it as you go. People think you're just raising your ticket prices all the time. Or if you start high, then you may be hard to get people engaged from the beginning. Ticketing tips. Here's like, once you set your ticket price, I believe in offering early bird pricing. This is getting revenue into your account to help you produce the event, help you pay for those deposits and things like that. Other things that I have really found successful is incremental ticket pricing increases. This means that, throughout the year or leading up to your event, your ticket will get more and more, the price will increase. I think that's really important. Also, you may want to think of odd and even pricing. Some people may know, but prices that end with a 9 or a 5 usually outperform lower prices or even numbers. So, $9.99 performs better than, sometimes $9.50 or even $10. So, people, or the $9.99, people really don't see that difference. Bundle pricing. If you've got multiple experiences they can do, let's say they're coming to a webinar, a business meeting, I shouldn't say webinar, but like an actual training, a conference, then, they can have their price of their ticket. They could maybe, have a special, signed book by the keynote speaker. They could, you could do different things. They could have an extra meet and greet with a speaker or something like that. If you're doing a concert or something, you could, offer in, they could bundle in the price of the ticket, their parking, and some merchandise or something like that, or a signed CD or a VIP meet and greet. There's different things you can bundle to drive that ticket price. Also include fees that are not in the price. This is, you have to decide, if you're going to say that your ticket fee is $100. Is it $100 flat, or is it $100 plus fees and services and things like that? So you really have to know which way you're going to do. And it really depends on If you're only selling tickets online, you're going to sell them at the door. If you're going to sell them at the outlet, how you need to really price your ticket and how you communicate that price to your ticket. And then if I can tell you anything, keep your ticket prices very simple. Don't overcomplicate it. Just keep it very clear and be very clear on your website or your ticketing page on what that's going to be. And then this is just a marketing tip when you're looking at ticketing pricing. I did the rule of 100 for any ticket price that's under 100 and you want to show a discount to that, show it in percentages. So if you want to do early bird pricing and say, let's say your ticket's $100, or let's just say it's like $50. And you say, okay, say, 50% if you buy early. So they would buy it for 25% or $25, I should say. But if tickets are over 100, show a discount of a dollar amount. So if you have a $200 ticket, you may say $50 if you buy early. And so really that's just, it's a marketing thing, but it will help you drive sales. And then also you can also do upselling on your ticketing pages where they can add on things. So you don't bundle it and say that you have to buy this whole bundle. You actually, they can, as they're buying things, you can set it up for them to say, would you like to add on parking? Would you like to add on merchandise? Would you like to add on a meet and greet? Whatever it is, they can see that and they can add on as you go. So you upsell to maximize your ticket sales. When you're choosing a ticketing system, so now we've got our price of our tickets. We know when we're going to sell them. Now, how are we going to sell them? So here are just some things to think about. This is huge. When you're making a decision on your ticketing system or registration system, you can have your website provider and your marketing person make that decision. But really, you also need the frontline folks or whoever you yourself or whoever that is that's going to be dealing with that system, part of that conversation and those trainings. It's got to be it's got to be easy to use. Next, it's got to be mobile friendly. So it's got to be something that people can actually get on their mobile phones and purchase. Also, it's got to be safe and secure when you're processing your payment, as well as it's got to be reliable. So just ask for, advice or ask for reviews, things like that. And it needs to give you data and insights. It needs to not only just tell you the zip codes and where people are coming from, because you can obviously export that data, but it needs to be able to get you like, when did they buy, what time of day? And then you can match that up to your marketing strategies and figure out, did we have a ticket increase and we increased our marketing and then, we sold this many tickets, and you can see those, be able to graph that data to be able to tell that story. And then things you may want to consider when you're looking at a ticketing system, how big event are you looking at? That's really your event scale. If you're looking at having a few hundred people, you probably don't need a full-on ticketing system. If you're looking to have, 10,000 tickets sold, you need to be looking at a ticketing system, especially when you want to look at registration times, time tickets, things like that. You can have different wristbands, different levels. Really depends on how much you want in your tickets of how big you should go. Again, here are just a few other things on what to consider. The 3 things when you're looking at systems, when you're doing your research online, what features do they offer? Do they offer multi-ticketed things? Do they allow people, if you're going to have like an indoor venue, can you do, seats for individuals, or what about groups? Can they do that? Does it integrate in with your own CRM or your own backend? What do you use to keep your customer information? Will it integrate with that? So meaning that your ticketing system may actually, you can put a plug in and all that information would just go into your customer database. Reputation. Are there people in our region or people in general that have used this product, and what do they have to say? Usually with ticketing systems, there's usually 3 or 4 that are hot at a time. I mean, there's a lot of options, but usually 1 or 2 events will start around our region. We'll start working with them, and then you'll start seeing them spread a little bit. And then pricing, how much they charge per ticket, what's their monthly subscription fees, really learning about what that either upfront costs are or what the costs are that are going to be given to your customers. Again, this is just, key things on best practices. Make sure it's mobile friendly. Make sure it's a sense of urgency. And this is more for registration systems. So if you're looking at, wanting to do a registration system for if you're booking if people can book your services online or things like that. I did want to make sure I hit on this. Make sure it's mobile friendly. Make sure that, when they come to your page, they know that, hey, I've got to get this done, and keep the form short. The form over here in the black box will show you really simply full name, reservation time, home address, email, mobile number, payment information. I mean, it's got to be really simple. when you're looking at putting a reservation system on your website, I would suggest this flow, which would be check availability, then you purchase your tickets, and then when to arrive. So you want to say, okay, I want to come on, next Thursday or, in this date. And then, okay, if that's available at this time, okay, I'm gonna go down here and purchase my tickets. And then the bottom will tell you when you need to arrive to experience that. So there's just some tips on best practices, some basics on ticket event and ticketing pages. Again, this is another best practices. Consider, if you want to do tiered ticket prices, mobile ticket options, as well as make sure that your ticketing system can have different payment methods. I would suggest that the more that can do Apple Pay and Google Play is really nice because people can just literally double click on their phone and they've bought the tickets. So it's nice, as well as make sure that ticketing system will embed into your website, or do you have to have another whole page that your website will link off of? The more you can keep embedded into your own website, the more control you're going to have in marketing to be able to follow those analytics and things like that, as well as make sure it can measure event data. Okay, so let's talk about costs in event ticketing system. So you want to have an event. You've decided on what you're going to do, how much you're going to charge, what's your strategy of when the types of tickets you're going to offer and when. And now you want to, okay, how much is it going to cost? I'm going to tell you that in the world, and most people don't know this, the ticketing industry, the event ticketing industry is $50 billion. And this was a number from 2020. And they anticipate this going up about $60 billion by 2025. So the event ticketing industry is a huge industry, and we need to look very, and so they're in it to make some money. Okay. I looked at about 10 different ticketing systems as I was preparing for this presentation. And what my experience is what I found was very consistent, which is most ticketing systems are going to charge you 2% of ticket sales plus $1 per paid ticket plus 3% credit card processing fee. So that means if you have a $100 ticket, you're going to be paying $6.09 in fees. Now, you're not going to pay that. Your customer's going to pay that. So you'll get the $100. They'll pay, $106.09, and that $6.09 is going to go to those companies. So this is normal. Okay. Sometimes you will see that they will want to charge 3% of ticket sales. And then, 50% for 50 cents per paid ticket, or up to $2 a paid ticket. Just depends on, what it is, but this is very much an industry standard right here. Now, let me tell you how a lot of businesses and a lot of organizations actually make money off tickets, a little bit more money than just the actual ticket price. Okay. So I'm going to give you a little bit, and most of you all may know this, but I want to make sure we go over it. So the ticketing system is going to get their usual pay, right? They're going to get their 2% on whatever you charge, plus the $1 per ticket, plus 3% processing fee. A lot of times, organizations will also charge shipping and or processing fees. If you have to ship those tickets, if they're not just going to be electronic, if they're not just electronic print-offs, but you're actually shipping wristbands or something, then you're going to have shipping fees you need to include that carries to that guest, as well as processing fees. Processing fees can be anything. Some organizations, especially like historical organizations, will charge maybe historic preservation fees and things like that. I've seen those happen like at theaters and things like that. But you can add these fees on there, and that is a way for you to make a little bit of money. Typically, these fees range anywhere, like for shipping and processing, from $5 to $25, depending on who it is and what it is. Most, if you're just a small organization, will charge anywhere from $5 to $10. So let's say we're going to charge $7.50 for shipping and processing fees on a $100 ticket. That's going to be, the customer's going to pay $113.59. $6.09 will go to the ticketing company. $7.50 will actually come back to the organization for shipping and then shipping. And this is a way just to make a little bit of extra money on those tickets. Some people may not want to do that. You may just want to charge the $6.09, and that is perfectly fine. But I did want to share this because it could be a way just to build in a little bit extra increase into what you're charging on that ticket. Okay, registration and ticketing tips I want to talk about. This is once you've got everything up online, it's all set, you picked your system. What do we do now? Try to keep your tickets online as long as possible. A lot of times we want to take those down because we're getting busier before the event. We want to take them down 2 or 3 days before the event. you actually want to keep them on as long as possible, not too long, but just really think about like, how long could we go that we're comfortable with? Really tell your website, on your website and your registration site, if tickets are available at the door. You need to be very clear if they're going to be door sales. Usually at the gate or door, usually costs a little bit more. But you want to make people know that, can they buy tickets? If they still want to come, they come to your website and you've already taken down, maybe it's the day of the event. Can they still buy them at the door? Also, you want to brief your registration staff or your ticketing booths on where people that have tickets can go, especially if you're looking at more of a business event where they pre-register or they're VIPs. Like, where do they actually go when they get there to check in? Be very clear on that. Also, you may want to send out a message the night before or 2 days before, final messages to anybody who bought tickets. You can put that on your website, but also send them an email is really helpful. And as well as if the event fees change, the day of, like it increases. I've seen this happen. Like you say, okay, I'm going to charge $10 more, at the door than I am, prior if they buy early. Then you've got to make sure that your system either will automatically on the day of increase, or you have to go in like at midnight that day of and increase it yourself. Make sure you do this, because sometimes if you forget about this, you can forget about this when people come in and they're charged the tickets. Your ticketing folks don't know, and it can be a little bit less. So always ask you to do that. And the last thing I have is, how do you calculate attendance? I get this question a lot from folks of how, you probably are thinking, well, I'm just going to calculate how many tickets I sold. And that is true. You can do that for ticket events. You want to do your ticketing sold, but you also want to look at your comp tickets. Like, how many comp tickets did you give away to your sponsors, your special guests, anybody like that? Also, your non-ticketed attendees, like visitors, volunteer staff, you can count them as well. And you can look at that total number and come up with your total event attendance. If you don't have a ticket event, you've got a free event. What can you do? One method is called the grid method, which is where you take 100 by 100 by square foot. A lot of police departments and cities will do this when they're estimating, attendance to things. But you take a picture of 100 by 100 foot, and you count the number of people in this foot, and then you times it by how many ever feet you have in your, how many square feet you have of your event. That's a lot of time taken if you've got a crowd that's really condensed down and it's almost impossible to count, one by one. And then also you have the Walmart method, which is where you can click people in and out, especially if there's an entry gate. That's a really good thing to do as well. So this is just a question that I'm asked a lot of times. It's like, how do I calculate this, especially on like community events and things that may be free? And I just wanted to share this. Okay. And finally, the final lesson I have is have fun. And this is not just have fun. And you're like, yeah, Kim, I'll have fun. No, this is actually, you have worked very hard planning this event, months, weeks, years, however long it is for you to plan this event, and really to take the time to enjoy it. And I use this picture of Bristol Rhythm and Roots in Bristol, Tennessee, and Virginia, because, was part of that event team for many, many years. And one of the things I learned about year 3 was I have never even caught a song of music, much less a set of music. And here, we work all year on this event. And so I became very intentional of my own rhythm of the weekend, like when I was going to take time to actually, be in event planning mode and making sure things were good. And then it's not that I would sit back and not work, but maybe I'm going to be intentional about saying, I'm going to catch 2 songs of this band, or I'm going to make sure that when I see people I know, I'm going to stop and talk to them and enjoy and be a good host. And so it's just really, worked really hard, long hours, 15, 20-hour days, but really taking time to actually enjoy your event. If it's a day event, just enjoy it. Like, because, life's too short just to be churning through these things, and you're going to be exhausted when you get done. And if you can at least have that enjoyment, it's going to be really important. So, final things and takeaways: plan, take your time to plan, think through all the things. Look at it through your customer's eyes. When you're planning, when you're setting up how your event's going to be set up, walk through like you're the customer or the guest, and how are they going to experience it? You don't know something, ask. There are still things to this day that I will call and ask people, different professionals, and say, walk me through this. And everybody's always so happy to help. Also, remember, pivot. You're going to make plans, but also be ready to pivot. Just know it's going to be part of it. Embrace it. Have fun with it. And that leads me into have fun. Enjoy the events that you plan, and it will come across in how you present your event to your guests. Do we have any questions? And also, I've also left my contact information here on the screen. It's on the last slide as well. So Sandy, I'm going to stop here and then ask if anybody's got any questions. I couldn't see if anybody asked.
I don't see anything, but I've got a couple while people hopefully will ask questions. And by the way, that was fantastic, very thorough. One question that I had was, now that we're getting hit with inflation, with the gas prices and so forth, and you're planning this event, let's say you started 8 months ago and this is the budget that you created. Well, things have totally changed now. Mm-hmm. What would you suggest that as you're starting to plan an event right now, to add on a part of your budget to make up for this?
Yes, you can do it. I would recommend doing a contingency, percentage, if it's a 5% or 10%, contingency budget that you have, that you make sure that you just set aside dollars that you don't touch, and they can be applied to those, whatever it is. If there's shortages on stuff and you can't get them, or you have to do expedited shipping fees because what you had planned on can't get there, so now you have to do this. Or if it's that just general, vendors are going to start charging more because they're going to have to, if you're doing stage lighting and sound at an event, before, they might have to go up 5% or so just to get the gas to get them there, to cover, to be able to take it, drop, set it up, do all those things. So I would consider, making sure as when you're negotiating now, you've got those contracts locked in, but also really setting aside some contingency dollars that you just have for those, unexpected increases.
Great. And is there a size limit that you would suggest that you look at hiring security for the event? If it's a certain size, should I hire someone to come and either at the door or what have you?
I really it depends on the type of event it is. If we're all outside and things like that, usually about 100 to 200 people or so, depending on however it is. If it's going to be inside and I can control what's coming in and out, I may look at a 250, 500. But really, a lot of times if you're looking at that, you might need to look at flow, if you're going to have, help getting people in and out of parking areas because people arrive at the same time, you have to leave at the same time. So a lot of times you can, kind of dual purpose folks, because during the event, there's not a lot going on during that time. But I would say once you get up to a few hundred people in our day and time, I really like to have just, you can't be too safe. But, if you're going to get into having, 1,000 plus, that's a no-brainer for me. Really over 500 is a no-brainer for me. But, even when we're looking at some of our smaller events, we'll look at that.
Right. Jean, did you have a question?
I just want to say you're amazing. There's so much information that you packed into this little over an hour presentation. So you can definitely tell that you have a lot of experience. And do you offer your services to the public?
I will tell you one thing. Here at the Cultural Center, I feel like we're becoming an event like planning facility. We have found more and more, especially as businesses, there's so many people we've changed, right? People have changed jobs, people have left, a lot of people haven't been replaced. And so, now more than ever, everybody's wearing more and more hats. And so one of the things that we're able to do is, as people are planning special events, like we've had we've had retirement parties, we've had different working, like presentations, like people come in and want to rent out just to have the conference rooms or different things for different meetings. They'll say, can you help me figure out what I'm going to handle for lunch or for dinner? And can you just take care of that? Can you just tell me what the menu is going to be and take care of it? And so our team have gotten really good at, we have a list of caterers we'll work with. We make sure we know what the person wants, the meeting planner wants, and then we just kind of take care of it on ourselves. So we've got the capacity to do that. And we've got trained culinary people on our team anyway. So just from different experiences. So we really try to be a good resource, because sometimes it's hard, especially, when I was looking at putting this together, there's so many times that I've been in a situation where I've been asked to plan an event and I have no team. Like I have nobody. Like, it's just like, and it's going to be a few hundred people, and you don't want to go to your coworkers because they're already stretched. I mean, they'll help you day of, but to get it done. And so that's where hopefully this checklist and these things will help you think through things, but also like lean on your vendors, like lean on your venue, lean on your AV folks, lean on your floral, to ask for help or ask for advice, or just lean on them. And a lot of times, like, I found some really out of the box thinking with not even thinking about it.
Hey, Kim, you touched on insurance, and depending on the event, you might want to reevaluate that for the upcoming event. But what if you are putting an event together, but it's going to be offsite on property that you don't own? Whose responsibility is it to have insurance? Is it you as the events planner, or is that the venue, or out in the middle of a field on a farm? I mean, where does that come in at?
I would say both. I would be extra cautious on that. I would make sure that your own insurance, team knows, who your company knows what you're doing, what type of liability you need, because you will have to provide some type of liability insurance. A lot of times you can ask for your vendors to have that, carry certain type of insurance. I know that when I have gone and set up at events, like I've had a booth, I've had to provide that, like liability policies and things. And so really asking your insurance what they need. And then when you're negotiating with that venue, what they need, what they're going to cover, can't be too safe. I mean, and another thing I didn't touch on, but is something to think about, especially if you have an event that could be really impacted by weather. If you're outside, weather insurance is something that I would really encourage folks to look into. I've had to use it twice. I mean, I've probably used it 15 times in my career, but I've been able to cash it on it twice, and it has been a game saver. It's been a game changer. And really all it says is, you say, on this day, at this time, I think there's, if there's going to be more than a quarter inch of rain coming, this is how much the policy is. It's going to be 50,000, it's going to be 100,000, whatever it is. And because you might want to look at gate, if you've got an event, people can buy tickets at a gate, or however it is. And that's your big gate time when a lot of your folks are coming. If it's raining, people aren't going to come. And so if you say, okay, from 4 to 6 on Saturday night or whatever it is, or Friday night, this is when most of our people come. I want to buy this policy for a couple $1,000s that then, if it rains, I'm not going to be completely out all of those dollars. Like, I'm going to be able to, if it's got to rain a certain amount, and they measure it, they come out, they measure it, it's a whole thing. But you can have that. And believe me, it has saved a couple events that I've worked with throughout the years. Really
Great.
Well.
Do you also have, sorry, Sandy, do you also have a cancellation policy that you usually build into your protocol for, like, if there is some disaster, that you can refund tickets or non-refundable or things like that?
I think the pandemic really showed us a lot through that process. Typically, if you'd asked me in 2019, early 2020, a lot of times I'd say, absolutely not. No cancellation policy. People buy tickets, they have them. And a lot of times you can say that. I think when we went through 2020, 2021, now I think good customer service, usually if you're going to, there's a couple of things here. If you're still going to have your event, you will probably have, if you do have people requesting for refunds, it will probably be minimal. Okay. If you're still going to move forward with your event, the amount of people that will ask you will be minimal. My recommendation is to do good customer service and, listen to those needs and go for it, and then make that decision. We had a situation, this has nothing to do with pandemic, but we at a music festival had a headliner back out. And so how we prepared for that was, a headliner is not the whole festival. So obviously you're not just going to give anybody their ticket back. But if somebody was just coming in to see that person and they were driving in, yes, we'd probably give that ticket back. And we did. And I think we had 3 people that were driving in out of state to see that one person. And so we gave it back. So try to do good customer service. If you're going to cancel your event, this is a pretty big deal. A lot of companies were not prepared for this prior to the pandemic, but really know what your clauses are to your artists, to your vendors, and things like that. Vendors and artists have gotten really good because they had to learn the hard way in 2020 with everything canceling. that sometimes, there's going to be caveats and things that say, if you do cancel this is what it may cost, even if it's, things like a pandemic and things. So just being very clear, those contracts, because different venues, artists are getting really, really good at making sure they're covered because they weren't covered before. They just lost money. Everything was gone. Which, now they might be rebooking, they may say, okay, if we get shut down again, then you have to rebook my artist this time. So you need to know those things. You need to know that, or you will have your event. But, for us, a traditional thing is we do require a deposit of usually 50%. And then I like to and then usually like the week of or a week before, we like to have full payment. And we'll work with folks on that.
Great. Thanks so much. This was so great. And I think everybody learned a little bit and got a better understanding for those that are planning events, what goes into it. I mentioned earlier, this session will be uploaded to the Virginia Highlands Small Business Incubator's Facebook page and also our YouTube channel, New Knowledge. Just go to YouTube and search New Knowledge and you'll find this in a couple hours up there. But Kim, thanks so much for doing this. And I also want to put a plug in for our next New Knowledge, which will be on March the 23rd. Emma White with the Innovate Fund is going to share the ins and outs of the new market tax credit or tax credits. So I encourage you, especially if you're looking at making some larger capital expenditures at your business organization, you might want to check this out. So thanks again. Hope everyone has a blessed day and be a blessing to someone else. Thank you. Bye-bye.